Today we're throwing it back to a great old project from Missouri Star Live in a brand new way. A few years back on Missouri Star Live, we made this string star wall hanging using our scraps, and I love hosting a big party on the 4th of July every year. We have all of our friends and family over, and it is just so much fun. So I like to have lots of things around the house to decorate and just really, make it feel festive. So I've had this wall hanging laying around for a while, and I needed some new pillows, so I have use this as inspiration, and we've turned it into a fun new project to make these great string star pillows. So let me show you how we did it. It's really simple, and using this method, of course, you can make the big wall hanging just with bigger half square triangles. So to get started, we have used this All-American 40 Karat Gems by Wilmington. It's a great tonal red, white, and blue pack of 2.5-inch strips. You're also going to need some of our 10-inch square foundation papers that we have here at Missouri Star. It'll be helpful if you have a 10-inch square ruler and maybe a 4.5-inch block lock or ruler to square. You can totally do this with your 10-inch, but it's handy to have the exact size that you need. So let's dive into making this. I have gone ahead and opened up my strips, and I've just cut them down in a bunch of random sizes because I like a lot of variety. And if you look at this pack, you can see these are all reds. They're similar tones, but they have just different prints on them, and it just makes it really interesting and fun. And all of them are that way in this collection. Even the white have different prints on them, which is really fun because it makes it look like you've dug through your scraps, but you didn't have to work as hard because we can just pick up this pack and have it all coordinate together. So now we're going to go ahead and take one of our 10-inch strips, or 10-inch squares, I should say, and we are going to fill this with our strips. And so I'm just going to pull some out of here, and I think I'm going to do navy for this one. So to begin with, I'm going to lay one down the center, and I'm going to pick a different print. Let's see, maybe this little guy looks fun. Oh, that one's not long enough. This one, this paisley. So I'm going to lay these together so that they overlap the edge of my paper, and I'm just going to sew with a 1/4-inch seam. And the reason that we're using these papers is it just helps stabilize a little bit. There's quite a bit of bias when you use this method, and this just helps hold everything together. There we go. I'm going to pull out my scissors here just because it makes it quicker, and I can just cut off these. We can use those again as we keep going. And it's nice to have your iron close by because you just want to stop and roll this back in between. And now we can add a piece to the other side. See if this one will fit. It will. So I'll lay this one here. And like you can see, these are all just cut at random widths. So I started with my 2.5-inch strips. Some of them I cut 1 inch off, some of them I cut 1.5 inches, some of them I left whole, just to give me some variety. We'll turn this one around. And we are just going to keep building out until we cover our whole paper. So as you'll notice, I'm adding strips to both sides before I'm pressing. So I'm just picking the print that I like best. I'll add this one to this side. Just sew a little bit past the paper. Trim this off. Flip it around to the other side. Add another strip here. And this project is so forgiving. Even if your seam allowance gets a little wonky, it's not going to matter. We'll trim this one off. And now I can take this to the iron and press both sides back. It just saves a little bit of time. We are getting really close to the end, so I think we can just add one more strip to both sides and finish this off. So we'll add this one here. Trim. Let's get a nice wide strip for this other side. Maybe this guy here. We'll sew this one down, and that will finish up our square. So now we can just trim and press one final time. You can see how this would be a great project to go through your scraps and get rid of some fabric that you've been holding on to. Because you just need, you know, red, white, and blue, and the print doesn't matter. Even if it's Christmas fabric, it's going to turn out great in the end. All right, so now to make this, we need to make 2 red squares, 1 blue square, and 1 white square. So I have some of these already done in a stack over here, but we are going to go ahead and take our 10-inch square ruler now and flip this over, and we're going to trim these down so that they finish at 10 inches. You could use the paper as your outline, but as you stitch, it does kind of cause the paper to warp, and so I don't know if you can see behind my 10-inch ruler, my paper ends up just a little bit small. So I prefer to use the 10-inch square as the guide as opposed to the paper itself. So we'll cut that side and this side, and then I like to stop and turn this so I'm not cutting at any weird angles. We want to be safe. Just line this up again in that bottom corner. Make sure it's nice and straight. And then we can cut and cut. So let me show you that. I have a red one already cut, but I need to go ahead and trim another white and red. So I'll show you one more time. We just flip this over to the back side. Technically you could square it from the front, but I just like to make sure I'm not cutting through my papers. I just kind of use that as my guide since that's what we started with. So we cut, rotate, there we go. And I'll cut one more from my white. Oops, that one slipped a little bit, so I'm just gonna do that last cut one more time. Make sure it's nice and square. There we go. All right, now they are all square and ready to go. And so now we're going to be using the typical Easy 8 method that Jenny teaches for half square triangles using our string pieces. And so I'm going to pair up my white with a red. Just going to put those right sides together. You can go ahead and peel off the paper if you want at this point. I feel like the more seams you take, the easier it is to pull this thing off in the long run. But you can see how easy it is to just peel this off. But for me, because it can get wonky, I like to leave most of this on until the end. And so I'm just going to take that little bit off to show you, make sure these are all lined up. And then I am going to get a pin. And my ruler here. And we can draw a line corner to corner in both directions. So I'm just going to mark that this way and this way. And then now we are going to sew a 1/4 inch seam on either side of those lines that we drew with our sets sandwiched together. So I'm going to start here. Make sure we're staying lined up as we go. That looks good. We can just flip this around and come back down the other side. And then we'll go the other direction. There we go, and now we can cut this apart. And so I like to start by just laying my ruler on the edge, making sure I'm going through those center seams. And we'll make one cut that direction and one cut this direction. We are going to square these up, so we don't need to worry too much. And now that they're apart, I can go back and cut on that diagonal line. You can see there we get our half square triangles. So let's just go ahead and finish cutting these apart. And this is going to give us 8 from each set. There we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and press these all back. I want to press to the dark side, so I'm going to roll these back so the seam is behind the red fabric. Okay, and our last one, we'll just press that back. And now we can take these and square them up. I like to use the block lock. Dropped one there. Let me grab my 4.5 inch block lock. That's the measurement we are looking for. And so if you're not familiar, when you're working with the block lock, the writing should be on your background fabric or your light fabric if you've pressed to the dark side. And then that ridge in the middle of your seam locks into the ruler so that we can go back and trim off this excess, and we know we're going to keep it nice and centered. So I'm just going to trim off this little bit from each of these. And this is one of those times where you'll be glad you took the time to square these up, because you can see, even though we had the papers, even though we're working with the same measurement, that last one I barely had to trim any, and on this one I have quite a bit to trim, and that's just how it goes sometimes. So we can just trim that off, and we're just checking each step of the way to make sure our pieces are staying square. So I'm going to finish squaring these up, and then we can get back to the layout. All right, we have squared up the last one, so I have all 8 of those trimmed up. I went ahead and squared my blue and red sets. Those are ready to go. And then the last piece that I need for this project is some solid reds for the corners of the pillow. If you notice here, this is the version I'm making. And so the outside corners are just 4 solid 4.5 inch. I went ahead and they're still strip pieced just like everything else in the pillow, but they're not half square triangles. So let's go ahead and cut those out now from this square. I am just, you know what I'm actually going to do? I'm going to cut a 4.5 inch strip just to make this easier on myself since I have my ruler here. There's one. And we'll need one more. Since remember, these are 10-inch squares. And then I can now come back and use my little block lock that I used for squaring up my half square triangles. And there's 1. 2. 3. This one's a little wonky on this corner. Here we go. And the last one. And so now it's all in the layout. So let's go ahead and lay out our star here. So remember, our solids are going to be in our 4 corners. So I can start by putting those in. And then I'm going to use my red and my blue for the middles. Oops, flip it this way. So the red is to the center. Make sure I have plenty of room to work here. There we go. And so I'll have 4 more of these that I can use for another pillow. And then I will use these star legs. Oops, let me make sure I turn it correctly. The white goes towards the red. There we go. You can see our star beginning to take shape. So there it is. All right, so now that we have this all laid out, we're gonna sew our rows together. So we're just gonna go 4 across. We'll make 4 rows just like so, and then we'll add those rows together until our pillow is complete. And then you can see on this one here, I went ahead and sandwiched the top with some batting and backing, and I just did this stars and loops quilting pattern. And then it's just a simple envelope back that it's finished off with. We have that great printable for you that explains how to make that depending on the size of pillow that you have. So be sure to check that out in the link. So you can see it's easy to customize these to your preference depending on how you put those half square triangles. It comes together really quick and easy. And again, it was inspired by this old tutorial that we did on Missouri Star Live a few years back. So be sure to go back and check that out if you want to make a wall hanging to match. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll see you next time. Hey everyone, it's Misty. Thanks for watching at home. If you aren't already a part of our Missouri Star family, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell if you want a notification every time we release a new video. I'll see you next Monday on the newest episode of At Home.